What is up, peeps? FZWTV here to welcome you back to another YouTube video in the same place as always. And in today's video, as you can tell by the title, of course, we're going to be talking about CSGO being free, the pros and cons. And at the end, I'll also offer my little opinion on CSGO being free or not. Now, it's come up in discussion a few times recently that CSGO might become free to play, like the same way TF2 did, well, Team Fortress 2, let's call it, and Dota 2 both became free to play eventually. Now, I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons with this one, and also it'd be nice to get your opinion at the end of it to see what you think. So we're going to start off with the pros right now, and the first one is that it encourages a lot of people to play the game. So it's going to make the community grow so much more because the game is free to play rather than you have to spend money to play it. The obvious pro here is that there's going to be a much larger community, which is going to make CSGO much more popular, and it's going to have a lot of benefits throughout time and financially as well. Like you can. If you look at it on this point, there'd be a lot more people buying skins. If there's a lot of people who can't play CSGO now because they can't get the pocket money to do it, then they can come on, jump the game for free, and whatever pocket money they get in the future, they can obviously spend on skins and stuff. So it could be a great thing to just grow the community in general. Another good point of view is that it gives a one-up against its competitive... What? Another point of view that is that it has a one-up... Yeah. Another good point is that why am I so bad at this? The second pro is that it gives the game a one-up compared to other games on the competitive scene. So CSGO is already probably the leading competitive FPS game out there right now, but it will give an extra one-up because, again, as leading from the first point, because there's a much larger community, because the game is free, there will be a much larger community for the competitive scene as well, and a lot of players who probably wouldn't have played the game because they didn't want to buy it, that are playing the game now and are free, who could be incredibly talented, and a lot more pros will be emerging as well. So it will have a much better competitive scene, because Dota 2 has an amazing competitive scene, and maybe because the game's free that might contribute to it. There's a lot of players people who could just jump onto Dota 2 whenever they want, and that grows the community and therefore grows the competitive scene. So that's another pro. Now, the third pro is kind of like an extraneous one. It's more about other games than CSGO itself, but it could actually encourage other competitors of FPS shooter games, so let's say Battlefield and COD. I know they're not exactly PC games, but if it's speaking about FPS specifically, I think CSGO is leading on this one, and a lot of people are comparing CSGO to COD a lot of the time. So it's quite obvious that they're competitors, but it might actually lead to other games becoming a bit more cheaper in order to compete. So if CSGO is free to play, if you're sitting there going, okay, COD or CSGO? CSGO right now is cheaper. It's definitely cheaper than COD, which gives it, as I said, it's pretty good. But if the game was free, you could be like, I can play CSGO without spending a dime. And then you could just jump onto CSGO, and then COD might start lowering its prices a bit just to make it look a bit more appealing in compared to CSGO. So that could be another thing. I think that's quite rare and probably not going to happen even if it did become free, but it could be a pro. It could actually happen. Okay, so that's the pros, and now we're going to go into the cons. Again, I think we're going to have 3 cons going into this one as well. So let's go into the cons. Okay, so the first con is not the obvious one. I know the obvious one, I'll come on to that one. But the one of the cons that I've come up with is that I feel like there'll be a massive overload in silver players. So the bell curve, the rank bell curve that Valve have been trying to do, will be affected heavily by an influx of new players. So as soon as the game becomes free, I would expect, a massive influx of new players, and therefore the silver ranks eventually will be incredibly high. There'll be a massive percentage of silver ranks compared to global, and then the bell curve, which Valve is aiming to achieve, I know it's not exactly balanced right now. There are still a lot more silvers compared to globals, but this bell curve that Valve are aiming to achieve will be heavily affected, in my opinion, in the sense there won't be a bell curve. It'll be like 2 bells. It'll be like, okay, so you got your global, goes up to your Nova range, and you go back down to your silver 2s or silver 2s. You go back down to your like Nova 1s and silver 4s, and then you go right back up into the silver 1s and silver 3s. So it'd be like a little wave or a roller coaster rather than just a straight bell curve. So that could be heavily affected by that, and Valve might see that negatively and then might bring it back to the way it was, might make it a lot easier to rank up again because of a lot of complaining silver players. So that could be a bad thing that happens if CSGO becomes free. Again, that would be a much longer term thing. I doubt it, but it is something that is possible. Okay, so the second con is that just because we have a large community doesn't make it a good community. CSGO is already known for being a toxic community. It's still a really, really good community, don't get me wrong, but it is known for being toxic. So if you add a lot more, let's say, COD players or players who are generally toxic in general jumping onto this CSGO scene, it might actually be discouraging for players in CSGO to play the game anymore. I know a lot of people who I've spoken to, that have played the game and stopped playing it just because of the toxic community, that they don't like the way people are. And I know it's a bit, in my opinion, it's a bit silly, because whatever people say, it shouldn't really affect you, it shouldn't really affect your desire to play a game, but people are affected by this, so it could be a bad thing in that way, because there's a much larger community, which means there's probably a lot more toxic and just bad people in general playing the game, that it might be discouraging to play the game in itself, so it could actually have a negative effect. And now the third and the obvious one, which I think is all on the tip of your tongues, which is hackers and smurfs will be incredibly high. Like, when you make a game free, okay, that means you can get the game over and over and over again on different accounts without spending anything. So you could hack as much as you want, you could smurf as much as you want, and the consequence will be 0 to none, because as soon as you get your account banned, oh, I could just go into another account and get another game for free. To get the same game, get CSGO for free, start hacking again. Oh, that account gets banned? Fine, let's go into another one, start hacking again. And hackers will not stop. It will just become incredibly high. And the same with smurfs. There's a lot of people who probably don't have smurfs now because they don't want to buy the game again. I have my own smurf, but that's for effing around, really. I rarely use it, actually. But there are people who don't want to buy a smurf account. So I know smurfs is not as big of a problem as hackers, of course, and it's not as crazy as hackers, but hackers and smurfs, there will be an incredible growth of smurfs and hackers out there, and it would just be kind of stupid. It would go in the opposite direction of what Valve is working on, because Valve is prioritizing hackers right now. CSGO is becoming incredibly competitive, and so many people are playing it now that the only real big issue with the game is hackers. Valve is working so much with the introduction of Prime account and stuff like that to really stop hackers. So making the game free would be literally a step in the wrong direction, be a step backwards for Valve, trying to make this game completely cheat free. Okay, so my opinion, which is the last point now, so my opinion is that it shouldn't be free. The game is incredibly cheap enough already, and there will be constantly discounts for the game, like 50-60% off. Like I know some people who've got the game for about $5, $3 even, and that is incredibly cheap for a full game, which will probably pay you back in about a few months' time because of the drops you can get and stuff like that. So it's incredibly great the way it is now. Making it free is, in my opinion, just pointless, because I think people can spare, I think it's usually at its highest, it's like 12 to 13 pounds. So I think people could spare that money, or if they don't want to do that kind of money, they can just wait until it's about half price and then spare half that money to buy an incredibly good game that is so much better than these AAA titles that go for 60 to 80 pounds. Like, is so much better, and you can get it for so much cheaper, that I think making the game free is so pointless that it's just not worth it, in my opinion. And I know there's a lot of pros for it, but the cons outweigh it so much, in my opinion, with the hackers and the negative community, and just there'll be so much more issues, in my opinion, if the game becomes free. So that's my opinion. I don't think it should be free. I think it should stay the way it is. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video, and peace.